Good morning. Good morning. The chime of the bell beckons us into a sacred time. Welcome all of you to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston, where we widen love's circle by honoring the inherent worth and dignity of all. We extend a heartfelt and inclusive invitation to join us in meaningful worship and in service to the world. We greet all those who have joined us this morning, those in our sanctuary with your nice smiles, and all of our many online viewers, así como el creciente número de participantes bilingües que nos acompañan desde sus hogares. I invite you to pause to greet one another after the service. Then make your way to Channing Hall for coffee and more conversation. Once there, please introduce yourself to those you don't know and make some new friends, and there are new faces out there too. Now please join Symphony Pringle and the Sanctuary Choir for our first hymn.
Good morning, everybody. Please join me in your teal hymnal for hymn 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. Please rise in body and or spirit as we sing hymn number 1008.
Please be seated. Whether you have come here with heart full or heart empty, with a heart aching or full of joy, when we share the silence of sacred space, then our heart is in a holy place. When we see our faces in each other's eyes and hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. This morning we are together, the heartbeat of this congregation. Come, let us worship together.
please join me in saying the Congregational Covenant. Love is our good of our congregation. Service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to encourage one another. Thus do we covenant.
I'm Thorpe Butler. My wife Rita lured me here first to the church about 30 years ago by telling me that this church had a really good music program featuring the classical repertoire of the church, which I missed even though I had left the Episcopal Church years ago when my Christian faith just slowly and quietly faded away. And I became more and more involved, first with the choir and then with other activities, most especially the Emergency Aid Coalition, gave me an outlet for my interest in serving other people, especially those less fortunate. And I've been a member for the last 30 years or so, and board member from representative from this church for a good part of that time. I consider myself now a religious atheist, which seems to be contradictory until you remember that the root word, Latin root for religious, is the same Latin root as ligament, which connects muscle to bone and therefore enables functioning. And religion is what expresses my feeling of connection with everything from the atoms in my body to everybody on the planet and to the stardust out of which we all come. So that's why I'm here. I really regard this religious community as very precious and want to help promote its continuation and healthy growth in the future.
Sometimes you don't know what something means to you until you've almost lost it. I had a sense of what this church means to me during COVID when I tuned in online and I saw the camera pan through the doorways down the aisle of an empty sanctuary. Those were hard times, but the staff, the board, and many members kept us together. And now that the church has reopened, and everyone is continuing to work hard. And I think it's time now to take us to a new level. The church is thriving, as almost I've never seen before. 600 people in sanctuary in the building and online on a recent Sunday. Programming is more varied and rich than it's been in a long time. And the children and the music, things are really showing so much energy. So that's why I'm supporting the capital campaign. I want to leave a bit of a legacy, and this church does just that. The church is leaving a big legacy.
Someone texted it to me. We have 73 pledges for a total of $1,568,000. Wow, you all sounded dynamite. Really good. Thank you so much. Well, next week is bread communion, and very often we ask you, as we do this year, to bring bread to share if you are able. It's one of the rituals that we do in Unitarian Universalist congregations, and because it's a really meaningful service, we have everyone in the service, the children, the youth, and everyone else. So, Carol is taking the young people out today for their activities, and they're going to learn all about the bread communion and some of the other rituals that we do here at First Church. So, we're going to ask the adults to sing as they go out. The lyrics are in your order of service. It's As You Go.
As you go, as you go, in peace. Know our love is with you always. As you go, as you go.
This is the time during the service when we pause, when we take time to enjoy just being. It's the time when we stop rushing and try to shut out distractions. It's the time during the week when we are able to be comfortable with the silence. And so we have intentionally carved out this time to calmly enter into a time of quietness. This is a time that some call meditation and others name prayer. Let your body settle into a comfortable place. Breathe with me as we gather to do the holy work of kinship and support. Open your mind, open your heart. God of many names and mystery beyond all our naming, can it be that another year has passed? It seems our clocks just sprang forward, and now we've fallen back to dinnertime darkness. We've had fair warning the holidays are upon us. Stores have offered Halloween candy since Labor Day, and Christmas decorations since before Halloween. Squeezed between turkeys and recipes for green bean casserole on the sides of cans make an appearance. Once the shelves are cleared of Christmas, Valentine's Day candy will appear. And as each of these holidays passes, we plan to finally begin our New Year's resolutions. Let us consider, last year, did those holidays see us pause to consider the meaning of the day? Did we honor our ancestors? Were we truly grateful for what we have? Did we make time for connection with family, biological or chosen, and our friends? Or did we rush from store to party to tree lighting? Did we reach out to those with needs and those suffering, or fall victim to temptations of conspicuous consumption? All too often our actions do not live up to our aspirations, but perhaps they cannot. May we be gentle with ourselves and others as we do our best to navigate through the distractions and noise of the upcoming holidays. As we enter this season, help us to both find and provide meaning, and to remember the meaning behind these rituals we are observing. We pray in the names of all those known and unknown, present and absent, remembered and forgotten. We pray in the names of all helpers of humankind. Amen. We pause now to lift up that which sits heavy and light on our hearts. Everett Morrison, who built our free little library out front, received his Eagle Scout yesterday. That's a big deal. You may applaud. We, of course, especially this weekend, give thanks for all those veterans who have served our country. Thomas Haney underwent surgery on Monday and is recuperating at home. We send him our love and healing wishes. We are keeping the entire Singleton family in our prayers as Carl goes through a difficult time. A close friend of Reverend Bosson, Tupac Enrique Acosta, has passed away. We send love and condolences to all his friends and family. We continue to pray for the people of Israel, Palestine, and all those around the world suffering the horrors of war, and pray for their safety, for peace, and for justice. We now turn to a practice inspired by African, indigenous, and pagan traditions. We say aloud or bring to mind those who we wish to be held by the loving embrace of this community. They are part of the great cloud of witness and memory, and we will, even if we do not know their names, hold them in our hearts. In this great cloud of witness and memory, amid this beloved community, we hear these names and hold them in our hearts. Let us remember the suffering and joy amid and among our community that we do not know. Each week at this juncture, we enter into a time of silence, a time when we pause in awe and wonder of the beauty, diversity, and mystery that is life. In the spirit of love, in the spirit of hope, and in the spirit of compassion, I now invite each of you to enter into a time of silent prayer, meditation, or reflection.
Each week, our morning offering is shared with an organization that shares our Unitarian Universalist values and through which we may live our principles in the world. Today, our shared offering will help to support our neighborhood science, technology, engineering, and mathematics elementary school. Your donation today will buy supplies for science classes at Lockhart Elementary, part of the HISD STEM Magnet program. HISD adopted a new science curriculum, but is not providing the materials needed to successfully teach the students. Teachers are having to buy supplies themselves, or the students will do without. Your donation will help give these talented students the tools they need to succeed. Those in our sanctuary will find the instructions for that giving in the order of service next to the name of the shared offering recipient. And those watching the live stream will see the instructions on your screen. Our regular Sunday morning offering collection invites us to weave a tapestry of love and action. We ask you to give generously. An offering will now be gratefully received.
Dedication to the offering that can be found in the order of service. To the work of this church, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings. Our first reading this morning is from the book of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 34 through 36. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Here ends the first reading.
The second reading is an excerpt from Chapter 3 of American Prophets, Dorothy Day and the Catholic Worker Movement, by Albert J. Roboteau. During Holy Week in 1961, my freshman year of college at Loyola University in Los Angeles, I went on a retreat with a small group of classmates at Vallermo, a small Benedictine monastery near Palm Desert, California. There was another retreatant staying at the monastery, an older woman named Dorothy Day. I had started reading her newspaper, The Catholic Worker, when I was 15 and knew of her outspoken commitment to serving the poor and protesting war. In fact, Reading The Catholic Worker had prompted me to engage a couple of guys in my dorm in a heated discussion about the immorality of bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The retreat master asked her to address our group, and she agreed. One evening, in a calm yet firm voice, she proceeded to condemn the nuclear arms race and insist that the United States should unilaterally disarm. Disturbed by her talk, it was, after all, the height of the Cold War, and seemed unthinkable to disarm in the face of Soviet missiles. We were too shy to challenge her moral authority. But after her talk, we asked the retreat master for his opinion. After a short pause, he responded, "Well, I am sure that one day Dorothy Day will be declared a saint, but were I President John F. Kennedy, I wouldn't take her advice." So ends the second reading.
Please join me in your gray hymnals for hymn number 34, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. Please rise in body and or spirit as we sing hymn number 34.
Though I may speak with bravest fire, and add my gift to all inside, and have love, my words away, by sounding brass and hopeless rain. Oh, I may
This church year, we are learning about, and I hope are being inspired by, some of the great spiritual activists of the 20th century. Diverse in their philosophies and theologies, these stimulating leaders were people who found a sense of the mystic, a connection to the infinite within the day-to-day work of justice-making. Author and theologian Howard Thurman defined a mystic as one who finds something within their own experience that opens up into the infinite. Thurman, whom we'll talk about more next month, wrote that among the insights upon which the mystic rests their position is that there is an all-pervasive spirit, time transcendent, space transcendent, that gathers up into itself the total gamut of human experience. This reminds me not only of the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part, mentioned in our seventh principle, but Gloria Anzaldua's assertion that spiritual activism is a visionary yet practical form of activism based on the belief in our radical interconnectedness. Furthermore, she believed that spiritual activism is spirituality employed in the service of social justice. In this sermon series, we're looking at the lives and writings of 10 mystics and spiritual activists in order to help us answer some questions for ourselves. Questions such as, what does it mean to lead a good life? And how can I deepen my spirituality to mobilize my social justice service in the world? Today, we turn our gaze toward Dorothy Day to look for answers. Dorothy Day began the Catholic worker movement with Peter Maurin in the early 1930s, and she was perhaps the best known and most influential political radical among American Catholics in the last century. Some 20 years after her death, America magazine, the Jesuit Review, assessed her significance. Without dismissing the importance of other leaders in the history of Roman Catholic Church in the United States, it is fair to say that Dorothy Day remains, at the dawn of the new millennium, the radical conscience of American Catholicism. Her life was a unique combination of social activism and deep religious feeling. The dual passion of social justice and intimacy with God was present in her life from early childhood. Now, something that struck me as I read her autobiography was that she was sort of on the same path that many of us are following, and perhaps even to get to a similar place, but taking a very different route. And this is what I mean by that. While many of us either didn't grow up going to church or grew up in a more conventional faith tradition, neither did she grow up going to church. But instead of gravitating toward a covenantal, less rigid faith tradition like ours, it was the structure and tradition of Catholicism that resonated with her. Some of us felt we had to leave such traditions to infuse our social activism with a sense of spirituality. But she did not. Rather than a focus on atonement through Jesus or a focus on the afterlife, we have gravitated toward a tradition that emphasizes salvation by character, the idea that the focus of religious life is in the here and now. Dorothy Day's service, in order to realize social justice, was modeled on what are called the works of mercy. Works of mercy refers to meritorious practices in Christian ethics. I know some of you grew up Catholic, so you may be familiar with corporal works of mercy and spiritual works of mercy. Corporal works of mercy tend to the physical needs of others. References to these are found not only in a sermon by Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew, which I referred to in our first reading, but also in the Hebrew Bible in the book of Isaiah. The works are listed to feed the hungry, to give water to the thirsty, to clothe the naked, to shelter the homeless, to visit the sick, to visit the imprisoned or ransom the captive. According to author Albert Raboteau, the core Catholic worker principles were three: voluntary poverty, personalism, and pacifism. Now, these strike me as both a crystallization and expansion of the works of mercy, and I plan to talk about each of these three in detail throughout the next hour. I was seeing if you were paying attention. Raboteau wrote the book we're using as one of our guides for this Lives of the Spirit series, American Prophets, 7 Religious Radicals in Their Struggle for Social and Political Justice. Our second reading was from that book. This month, the other book we're reading is Dorothy Day's autobiography, The Long Loneliness. Another thing I noticed while reading The Long Loneliness was that Dorothy Day proved to be both a mentor and mentee. Her life inspired many, and she drew inspiration from many, both those she met in person and those she read about. Although her parents didn't take her family to church as a child, a local pastor persuaded her parents to send 4 of their children to Sunday services. There she fell in love with the Psalms and prayers. Later, her voracious reading led her to become suspicious of religion, even agreeing with a professor who remarked that religion is for the weak. But she warmed to the concept and years later, with the birth of a daughter, accepted it. One of her biographers shared her words. When one has a child, life is different. Certainly, I did not want my child to flounder as I had often floundered, without a rule of life and instruction. Day had no doubts that it would be the Catholic Church in which she wanted her daughter to be raised, in large part because it held the allegiance of the masses of people in all the cities where she had lived. It was the immigrant church of the laboring class that appealed deeply to Day, the socially concerned activist devoted to the poor, the laborer, and the immigrant since her youth. While reporting on a hunger march in Washington, D.C. in 1932, she became dismayed at the lack of Catholic participation by clergy or lay people. Afterwards, she prayed that a way would open for her to use her talents for her fellow workers and the poor. Shortly thereafter, she met Peter Marin. Several mutual acquaintances had told him to seek her out, as they thought alike. She said, his spirit and ideas would dominate the rest of my life. According to Raboteau, her experience in journalism, socialist concern for the poor, love of literature, omnivorous reading, familiarity with protest techniques, and critical perspectives on society's injustice had fitted her, thanks to the unlikely catalyst of Marin, to lead a movement. He encouraged her to look at history in a new way, by looking at it through the lens of the lives of the saints, because he believed sanctity and community really mattered. The saints weren't the only mentors they found on paper. They both had been influenced by the works of Kropotkin, the Russian proponent of cooperative forms of labor, with workers sharing fairly in profits and ownership of means of capital. By the age of 15, Day was absorbing Jack London and Upton Sinclair. Perhaps it would be more accurate to say Day and Marin served as spiritual directors for one another, listening to one another and commenting to cause the other to reflect and grow spiritually, and as life coaches, helping the other develop skills and attitudes to achieve their goals. We often think of mentors as someone more experienced who guides and directs a less experienced person in the business world. The goal of such guidance is typically career and financial success. But because Day was more interested in emulating the lives of the saints, not business entrepreneurs, she came to embrace a radically different life plan: voluntary poverty. She said, one who has accepted hardship and poverty lays himself open to the susceptibility to the sufferings of others. Marin had previously found work digging ditches, quarrying stone, harvesting wheat, cutting lumber, and laying track. Through his years of reflection and hard labor, he came to embrace poverty as a gift from God. According to scholar Mel Peel, since the movement believed that the vows of poverty of many Catholic religious orders had been rendered meaningless by the collective wealth of their orders, the workers took care that the group as a whole should not accumulate assets beyond the bare minimum. The Catholic workers' houses of hospitality proved to be the epicenters for Day's life of voluntary poverty and living out the works of mercy, to feed the hungry, to give water to the thirsty, to clothe the naked, to shelter the homeless, to visit the sick, to visit the imprisoned. Today, there are scores of Catholic worker communities across the world, including Casa Juan Diego here in Houston. These houses of hospitality were not only places to practice voluntary poverty, but also the principle of personalism. There were two sides to this coin for Day. Not only was each and every individual valued, but each had a responsibility to do the works of mercy in a hands-on way as well. She believed the needs of the poor would be best appreciated in community through face-to-face contact. In fact, she believed community was vital. And to hearken back for a moment to a thought from Howard Thurman, the mystic is in search of an aspect of human experience that is simultaneously an element, an aspect, a quality that is God in humanity. I did an internship at the First Street Mission in Fort Worth while I was in seminary. Volunteers from the nearby Methodist Church made lunches for the unsheltered folks and ran food and clothing banks for the indigent. It became clear to me that it becomes far less easy to ignore or even generalize about people who are oppressed, underserved, or down on their luck if you're looking them in the face. To be honest, it's why I find it so difficult to acknowledge those at the train station trying to get my attention. If I look them in the face, I have to acknowledge their need, their suffering, their humanity. I imagine you've heard the phrase, "You will never look into the eyes of someone God does not love." But I'll take it a bit further. You will never look into the face of someone who does not bear the image of God. When I avoid catching the eye of someone walking through Midtown because I don't want to be asked for money, I'm avoiding acknowledging not only the spark of the divine in that individual, but I am avoiding acknowledging that I live in a country that shows little care for its most vulnerable people. According to the Congressional Budget Office, of $1.7 trillion in discretionary outlays, $751 million, 45%, is spent on defense, while $910 million is spent on all other non-defense, including social services. Which transitions nicely to the third principle of the Catholic worker movement, pacifism. The first two principles, voluntary poverty and personalism, would be difficult enough to adopt or adhere to. Like the man who questioned Jesus and was advised to sell his possessions and give to the poor, many of us don't want to even consider voluntary poverty. We like our stuff, and we've worked hard for it. Sometimes we rent storage facilities for our extra stuff. And personalism, we have to value every individual, even those I don't like or vote differently. Then I have to help folks I wouldn't even want to hang out with. Can't I just write a check and not have to look them in the eye? I'll explain to the young people later what a check is. So those are difficult enough. Then we add something difficult and controversial, pacifism. Do we really want Putin rolling through River Oaks on a surplus Soviet tank? We have to protect ourselves. Pacifism may be the hardest of all to wrap our minds around. I imagine some of you are familiar with just war theory. It's a tradition going back centuries of military ethics whose goal is to ensure that a particular war is morally justifiable. A list of criteria must be met in order for that war to be considered just. One such checklist specifies that only duly constituted public authorities may wage war. There must be good grounds for concluding that aims of the war are achievable, that all nonviolent options must first be exhausted before the use of force can be justified. And the reason for going to war needs to be just and cannot, therefore, be solely for recapturing things taken or punishing people who have done wrong. Innocent life must be in imminent danger, and intervention must be to protect life. Well, I'm sure you see the problem with this. The checklist isn't universally accepted or agreed upon, And even if it was, those desperate to go to war will claim the criteria has been met, whether or not it has been. But Reverend John Haynes Holmes said it better than I on the eve of World War I. But I must go further. I must speak not only of war in general, but of this war in particular. Most persons are quite ready to agree, especially in the piping times of peace, that war is wrong. But let a war cloud no bigger than a man's hand appear on the horizon of the nation's life, and they straightway begin to qualify their judgment. And if the war cloud grow until it covers all the heavens, they finally reverse it. This brings the curious situation of all war being wrong in general, and each war being right in particular. And it was the British philosopher and logician Bertrand Russell who pointed out that war does not determine who is right, only who is left. I know this weekend we observed Veterans Day, and while I didn't expect to spend so much time quoting Reverend Holmes, I felt I really needed to add this excerpt from his same sermon. If any man or boy in this church answers the call to arms, I shall bless him as he marches to the front. When he lies in the trenches or watches on the lonely sentinel post or fights in the charge, I shall follow him with my prayers. If he is brought back dead from hospital or battlefield, I shall bury him with all the honors, not of war, but of religion. He will have obeyed his conscience and thus performed his whole duty as a man. But I also have a conscience. I also must obey. These excerpts are from his sermon when he affirmed his pacifist commitment to his congregation, the Church of the Messiah in New York City. While most of his congregants disagreed with his position on the war, as did the majority of lay and ordained Unitarians and Universalists, the congregation supported his freedom of the pulpit. He resigned his fellowship with the American Unitarian Association due to its policy requiring ministers to pledge their support for the United States participation in World War I. His church became non-denominational and was renamed Community Church of New York and remains so named today. Dorothy Day in The Catholic Worker met at least as much criticism as Holmes. When the Spanish Civil War broke out in 1936, although most American Catholics supported Francisco Franco, the newspaper declared itself neutral. She wrote, "We are not praying for victory for Franco, nor are we praying for victory for the loyalists whose leaders are trying to destroy religion. We are praying for the Spanish people." Both the Catholic hierarchy and laity were troubled by the neutrality, and bulk subscriptions to the newspaper were canceled. The pacifist stance held firm through the Second World War, which led to further drops in subscriptions, dissension in the hospitality houses, and a mountain of angry letters. Even Marin suggested she just say nothing, but she refused to give in. Pacifism, personalism, voluntary poverty. Incredibly difficult, even controversial. But Dorothy Day's character was such that she not only chose these, but refused to abandon them. Might this devoted Catholic be a model for us for our salvation by character? To what degree are we willing to do the same thing for those things we believe in? The religious life, spirituality, meaning, call it what you will, is found here, now, in this life that we lead, among the company we keep, and expressed most fully in our actions. Her actions were surely experiences that open up into the infinite. She took personally her obligation to perform the works of mercy. I close with the words of Dorothy Day. As we come to know the seriousness of the situation, the war, the racism, the poverty in our world, we come to realize that things will not be changed simply by words or demonstrations. Rather, it's a question of living one's life in a drastically different way. Amen, and so be it.
Please join me in your gray hymnals for hymn number 307, The Human Touch Can Light the Flame. Please rise in body and or spirit for hymn number 307.
Please join me in extinguishing the chalice by reading the words in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Go forth into this week, and may you be able to employ your spirituality in the service of social justice. May you find a connection to the infinite within your day-to-day work of justice making. May you be blessed and be a blessing to all. So be it, and amen.
thank you so much for watching our service today. We're glad you're part of our online community, where we welcome people who are diverse in faith, ethnicity, history, as well as gender identity and sexual orientation. There are many different ways you can get involved in our community. One you can do right now is by clicking like below or subscribing to our channel. If you're interested in joining our congregation, please email us at membership@firstuu.org.